Hello everyone, welcome to ATN. I'm your host, Amin Dillon, and today in the show we are talking about disability claims for stress at work and mental health. Joining me in the discussion is personal injury lawyer Nainish Kotek from Kotek Law. Sir, it's good to have you back at ATN. How are you?
Thank you, it's great to be back.
And you and I were discussing before the show, there's been some very big high-profile celebrity suicides due to mental illness recently.
Yeah.
So this is just not an issue for celebrities, this is affecting us all. Do we have an idea of how big of an issue it is here in Canada?
You know, you'd be very surprised. 1 in 5 Canadians at some point in their life will experience mental illness. Mm-hmm. And we can look around and count 1 to 5, 1 in 5. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, 8% of adults is going through depression. Mm-hmm. And these are stats, they're reliable statistics. And it's an invisible illness, mental illness. And it is heart-wrenching to hear about the high-profile suicides mm-hmm. of people we know, people we've learned to respect and watch on TV and buy from and so on and so forth. But what is equally heart-wrenching are what I would say are the invisible people, those everyday people who go to work and struggle or can't work and struggle and are getting help to a certain extent or not getting help, and who are often being ignored by the medical system or being denied legitimate claims because their illness cannot be touched. Mm-hmm. You can't see mental illness on an X-ray, on an ultrasound, mm-hmm. on a CT scan, unless there's an organic brain injury. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing are very unfortunate results for people in their lives, in their ability to earn income, mm-hmm. in their ability to have social interactions. Mm-hmm. So this year, I believe it was in May, it was in 2018, we had Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think society is starting to change and look at mental illness as being very legitimate mm-hmm. and being something that should be taken out of a stigma-based outlook, mm-hmm. that people can come forward mm-hmm. and acknowledge, I'm depressed, I have anxiety, I have a phobia, please help. Instead of keeping it in and letting it boil and boil and having their lives disrupted. And unfortunately, there are many people who have committed suicide mm-hmm.
because
they were ignored by, whether it be the medical system or by their work or disability insurers.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, is people think that they can spot somebody with mental illness. And whenever these big celebrity people are committing suicide, mm-hmm. one of the first things you hear is, oh, so-and-so seems so happy. You know, I just saw so-and-so, there seem to be no issue. So right. Do you think maybe that's one of the biggest issues with getting them help?
It could be, because as human beings, we tend to want to put forth a happy face to other people. And it's almost, if you ask someone, how are you? It's just a greeting. They're going to say, I'm fine, thank you, mm-hmm. and you, even though they may not be. Mm-hmm. I think that as more awareness is instilled on society, mm-hmm. and as we value people's mental health equally as we do their physical health, mm-hmm. it would lead to people coming forward more mm-hmm. and acknowledging, I think, to family members and friends and mm-hmm. colleagues and medical professionals that they are suffering from mental illness, and whether it be anxiety, depression, mm-hmm. or phobia that is making their life very, very miserable and difficult.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think is interesting is when I was researching into how mental health and work tie in together, one of the things that came to my observations was, you know, before it used to be very physically demanding jobs, right, where we used to a lot of people having to be very active at work. And now with improved technology, automation, a lot of people are doing maybe desk jobs or not so much physical, but in terms of claims, physically you may not be, you know, having the back strain or injury like I'm sure you're used to seeing, right. But mental health, those claims are on the rise, and I think it's probably due to the nature of the work changing as well, right?
I think that's a very valid point. The majority, I would say, of my short and long-term disability cases where I assist clients who have had those benefits denied, involve some component of mental illness. And often it is triggered, maybe not a direct result, but triggered by an employment, a toxic employment environment. And the environment may well be having a supervisor who is bullying, who is unsupportive, is making sexist or racist comments, or the workload is just unmanageable, the expectations are unmanageable. And there may be other factors at home that are contributing to it, but certainly, yes, the workplace is a factor, even with the sedentary jobs, because you're still interacting with people. You're still interacting with customers, and sometimes that stress is so much. And when you have workplace stress, when you can't perform the work, that really, it strikes someone's self-worth. Because most people who work, they take pride in their work, and they consider, I'm doing this work and I'm doing it well. And when anxiety and depression arise, when work stress arises, it really takes that sense of self-worth away from someone, and it can lead to further depression, isolation. And it does lead to people either quitting, I've had enough, getting fired because they're having issues with their boss, and maybe they're not performing the job the way they used to, or making a legitimate disability claim with their disability insurer on the basis of the mental illness and stress that they are undergoing at work.
And we're actually going to talk about that in terms of what resources and supports are available to people. We got to take a little break, so folks, we'll be right back. Welcome back to ATN. I'm your host, Amit Dillon, still in studio chatting with Ninesh Kotek from Kotek Law. Okay, so we were talking about before the break about mental illness and how it affects disability, and a lot of it can be attributed to work. Now, we were just talking about, the jobs have changed, right? They're not so much physical demanding, but now there is stress at work. There's a lot of people that are doing more and more work, desktop jobs. So in terms of somebody's at a job where they're feeling stressed, maybe they have a supervisor like you're mentioning, or a coworker, or just too much work on their plate, what resources or supports are typically available to them?
Well, I think first and foremost, a person in that situation should seek some help from the medical profession. Go to the family doctor, talk about that stress. There may be techniques that the doctor could advise the person to do to calm themselves. Maybe it's medication, maybe it's meditation, I don't know. But at the workplace, really depending what the issue is, I think talking to a supervisor, talking to HR if they have an HR department about the concerns. Sometimes it's not good enough. Sometimes the stress, it becomes overbearing. And the person is just unable to work, and then now we're talking about a situation where what do I do? I can't work. So many places of employment have group plans that would cover short and long-term disability benefits. So what a person would do in that situation is they would have a form filled out for their insurer. It's called the employee statement. The employer will fill out a statement which sets out factual information, salary and last day of work and so on and so forth. And the doctor will fill out a physician statement. And that will be submitted as a short-term or a long-term disability application to be adjudicated upon by an insurance company. If a person doesn't have a group plan available to their work, there may well be Canada Pension Plan disability benefits that are available if the disability is so severe that it becomes what's called severe and prolonged. EI is available. I believe it's either 15 or 16 weeks for sickness, and a person could take that. So there are medical resources and also financial resources that are available to people who are suffering to a point where it becomes, work becomes unmanageable.
When somebody is filing, let's say, for benefits through their work disability provider, how do these companies typically handle these claims?
Okay. Well, they have an adjudication process. So they want to see medical evidence. They want to see medical evidence that deals with a person's function. So it may not be enough to simply say that this patient is depressed, this patient has this back pain or what have you. What is important is that evidence be led about how that pain, how that illness affects their functioning, affects and what limitations there are. So if that evidence is presented in an effective way, the claim should be accepted. Now that's an ideal world. Often claims are not accepted, and often claims are paid for a little bit and then they're subsequently denied, and there are of course remedies to that as well.
What happens if somebody's claim is denied?
Right. So I'll tell you what happens. They're going to get a letter from an insurance company that's going to say a few common things. There's insufficient medical evidence. We don't think you meet the test of disability as defined in the insurance policy. They're going to say, if you have any more information, could you send it to us within 90 days, 30 days, and we'll look at it again. But we don't, you pay for it, there's no guarantee on it. That's called the internal appeal process. In my experience as a disability lawyer doing this many years, is that process rarely ever works, because you're asking someone from the same insurance company to adjudicate their colleague and look at the same documentation or a little bit more. Inevitably the decision is going to be, it's going to be negative. My suggestion is to go to a qualified disability lawyer. And what we do when someone comes to us in the situation, I ask, okay, could you please bring in your denial letter if there is one, and we have a long chat, and I let the person tell me their story, what has happened to them over time to result in their inability to work. And then we go with a plan of action. This is how we're going to tackle this problem. And it usually is this: we're going to start a lawsuit very quickly with the disability insurer, because time is of the essence for the client. They're not getting paid money. They don't want to lose their house. They have expenses. They don't want to be on the street. So we work very quickly to get the statement of claim out, to get the litigation going, and to get the disability insurance company to the table, give them sufficient evidence to get them to the table. When I say table, I mean at a mediation, for example, where we can get a settlement, get them reinstated, or get a settlement that will be a good, fair, equitable settlement that will assist the person who is disabled to move on with their life.
When most people are coming through your doors, do you find that it's because they've been denied by their disability provider, or is there any possibility that they might be denied by CPP or EI?
Right. We assist people with CPP disability benefit denials in addition to short and long-term disability claim denials. We don't assist with the EI aspect. So when it comes to disability claims, that's what we do. We help people who have been in significant car accidents and slip and falls. If they have significant injuries, our main focus is helping those people who are disabled.
And I know from interviewing before, if somebody has, they just want to find out if they even have a case, is there any charge for coming in and having a consultation?
No, there's not. Our consultation is free, and in fact, you come in, you get a nice coffee with that, and you spend time with us, and we talk about your case. And we don't charge until the case is resolved, until we get money for someone. We don't take money from the client.
And if when they're sitting down there telling you about their claim and their case, and it doesn't sound like there's anything you can do, you will tell them. You won't essentially take them through the whole process, and no one gets paid then, and no one gets money, right?
You know, everybody's time is valuable, theirs and ours, and we would give the honest and correct advice to a person coming to us as to the merits of the case, and if it is a case we in fact would take.
Okay, great. We got to take another little break. After the break, we're going to talk about how people can get in touch with you. So folks, we'll be right back. Welcome back to ATN. I'm your host, Daman Dillon, still in studio chatting with Nainish Kotek from Kotek Law. All right, so we've spoken a lot about what people should be doing if they are looking at filing a disability claim for mental illness. What sort of last pieces of advice do you have for people?
Okay, a couple of things. Well, one, never lose hope.
Which is a big one, because especially when you're dealing with mental illness, that can be very difficult.
Absolutely. So whether it's on life or whether it's about your claim, there's always help. In terms of if you are actually in the process of filling out a claim or making a claim, or you're having your claim adjudicated, a couple of points of advice that I would like to give. Number one, be honest. Don't lie. Ultimately, things will come out. So be upfront. Number two, practically, go to the doctor because the supporting evidence is going to come from your physician's notes and see specialists because their notes are going to become important as well, whether it's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, in particular for people who are suffering from anxiety or depression. The next thing is, and it's again very practical, watch your social media because social media, people, we tend to post happy things, smiley things, good things, party things, and not sometimes the true feeling that's inside if there's anxiety or depression. And what can be posted can be taken out of context. I'm not saying don't have social media. It's important to people to have. But be careful what you post. Make sure what you post is depicting how you say you in fact are to your doctors and to your insurance companies. The other thing that is practical is if you keep your profile public and you have a litigation or a case going on, courts are more likely to order the disclosure of the pictures in those profiles, and that could be detrimental to the case. If you insist on keeping your social media profiles while the litigation case is going on, that could be any type of insurance case. It could be a family law case, in fact, any sort of litigation. I would suggest making the profile private, and then there's more of a reasonable expectation that those posts or those pictures will be kept private, and courts may be less likely to order the production of those.
Okay, and if people do want to reach out to you and find out how you can help them, what's the best way to reach you? I
think, go to our website, kotaclaw.com, take a look at the testimonials, take a look at the community work we do and our success rate. Look at our videos because we have a lot of answers to common questions.
And your blog posts are too very informative.
That's true. I blog usually once a week, and I do my own blog. So most of my own. I have a few that other people do, but most of the blogs are done by myself. So check those out. KotacLaw.com. We do have 1-888-GO-KOTAC is our toll-free number, and we have a few offices, and would be happy to meet with people for a free consultation if the need requires.
And I always like to remind people, because I know we have a very diverse amount of viewers, is you do have many languages offered, including Punjabi and Hindi, right?
Yes, we do. We have staff that's multilingual, and if there's a language that we don't have someone speaking, we can always bring an interpreter in.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I always learn so much when you're here, so hopefully our viewers did as well. That brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Amin Dillon, signing out from the ATN Studios.